All right, we're live, and I'll kind of monitor the comments a little bit, see what's going on. We'll wait for a few more people to come, and then we'll start here. All right, we're live, and I'll kind of monitor the comments a little bit, see what's going on. All right. Well, I'd like to start off and say, I really appreciate you coming out and at least taking the time to be able to speak to me and obviously people that follow my page. And, I just wanted to have you on because I feel like judges are often overlooked. And I just can't stress how important judges are, especially Supreme Court judges. And that is what you are running for in North Carolina. And I just can't stress how important that is and how much that may impact our lives or our laws for almost indefinitely, it could be. So I just wanted to just express how important that is, how I'm glad that you are running for that position. I think you do excellent legal work, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to at least be heard. And if you just want to explain, what you do, because a lot of people may not know. And I just think it's very important people understand how important this election is and how important judges are, especially for North Carolina. So.
Yeah, well, David, first of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on with you this evening. I'm Phil Berger, Jr. I'm a judge on the North Carolina Court of Appeals, and I'm running for the North Carolina Supreme Court. And you talk about, how important these positions are, especially on the Supreme Court. I'll just give you a concrete example right off the bat. The other day I was writing an opinion, and appellate judges, when they issue a decision, it's called an opinion. It's like an order that you would get from a trial court. It's just a little bit different format. But I was writing an opinion, and I quoted a case from 100 years ago, a North Carolina Supreme Court case from 100 years ago. So think about this for a minute. A justice on the North Carolina Court of Appeals 100 years ago went into his office in Raleigh, sat down, and wrote out an opinion that affects you today, that binds your life and your actions today. You don't see that with the legislative branch or the executive branch, right? You can change a law, you can amend a law, or repeal a law with the passage of a simple majority and then signature by the governor. Policy preferences by the governor can change every 4 years. But when's the last time you heard of a court overruling itself, right? So the decisions that judges and justices make on our appellate courts are generational, and their impacts are felt for not 2 years or 4 years, but potentially indefinitely, as you mentioned. And that's just a concrete example of a case that 100 years ago, right, affects you today. And so really what we do on the appellate courts is we look for errors of law. So your local courthouse, your local trial court will have either some sort of legal proceeding or a trial. And the parties, if they're not satisfied or they believe that perhaps there was some error of law, they can appeal that to the Court of Appeals. And we review those court proceedings to determine if there was error. Now, it's not like what you see on TV, right? What you see on TV with the jury and the witnesses in the witness box, right? The real exciting stuff. That's not the appellate courts. The appellate courts, you've got two lawyers answering legal questions from judges or justices who are curious, interested in the proceedings, and want to know a little bit more about specific points of law as opposed to testimony. So it's very, very pointed questioning and hopefully, in our opinions, pointed analysis.
So basically, just so you kind of reiterate, because I know a lot of people don't understand, but so like in district court, you have the DA, you kind of have this, thing going on where you have all these attorneys lined up, kind of going through the shucks or tickets, and they have all these cases and they're running around. It's kind of, very, very all over the place. But, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, appeals is more, you have multiple judges up there and you're kind of just arguing different kind of points of law or different points at issue that's with your case, because you're appealing a lower court decision. Am I right?
Right. So in a trial court, what you see on TV, there's one judge, right? But with the appellate courts on the North Carolina Court of Appeals, we sit in panels of 3, and the majority determines the outcome of that case. On the Supreme Court, it's a 7-panel or a 7-justice panel all the time, and again, majority rules on those panels, and they are specific points of law, or like you said, specific issues related to the law that are decided in our appellate courts. And some of the ones that have been in the news recently, Racial Justice Act is an issue that's been in the news recently, that our Supreme Court recently has decided. The last term, I think State versus Robinson was the name of the most recent opinion. So they all deal with not factual issues. The record, as established in the trial courts, is set. So we don't look at facts; we look at issues of law.
Okay, well, that's great. In two, like you said, going back to your opinion, or when you're talking about previous ruled cases, is it, just for people to understand, is it there's something called where once a court makes a decision, especially at the Supreme Court level, that kind of binds the other. It becomes almost like where the lower courts have to abide by that, or it comes almost like a law, right?
Yeah, David, that's absolutely correct. Sorry, I froze up there. So just think about the United States Supreme Court, right? When they issue an opinion, it is the law of the land. It binds every court on that issue. With the Supreme Court, it's the same thing in North Carolina with regard to issues under the North Carolina Constitution. So the law that's handed down by the North Carolina Supreme Court affects every individual in North Carolina, affects every court proceeding in North Carolina. And what the Supreme Court says is the law of this state.
Awesome. All right. Well, just from going through all the cases, and I know, you're trying to get on the Supreme Court, and we have Justice Newby on there, who's another person that's going to be on the ballot. Very great. I enjoy reading his opinion. Well, I guess more dissent than I would say anything else, but it's really good to see when he comments on cases and why he, the certain points of law that he's following and how he comes to that conclusion. And I find it really interesting that he's often alone on his opinion. And I just and I know you can't really speak to that, or you might be able to, but I just think that it's really interesting how you have people of a conservative mindset, or how you interpret the law, or some guidelines along that, or how ways you view the Constitution, and how you come out to the outcome, and why is it that he is the only dissenting person a lot of times on these certain cases, do you think?
Right. Well, a lot of it comes down to judicial philosophy. And if you think about it this way, judicial philosophy is the operating system for a judge. It basically controls how you look at things, how you produce opinions, and how you interpret the law. So with me, I'm a textualist or an originalist, and that is just a way of saying I believe that when the legislature passes a law, that the words on the page mean what they say, and they say what they mean. that judges are not to legislate from the bench, right? They're not to make it up as they go. They're not to substitute their will for that of the legislature or the lawmaking body. And we've got an issue in not only in the state but in this country with activist judges who think that they can interject their opinion and their will into what the law is. And when you read the words on the page, if it's got a plain and ordinary meaning, then you apply the words as written. You apply the law as written. It's only if there's some ambiguity in the law that you look to legislative intent or some of these other issues. But individuals who subscribe to the living document theory, right, that the Constitution or some legal text somehow morphs and changes based on present day conditions, they often substitute their will for that of the legislature. And that is getting outside of the separation of powers lane that we're supposed to be in. And I just think about when you went to school, right? When you were in grade school, that you and I were taught that the legislature makes the law, right? The executive branch enforces the law, and the courts uphold the law. And we've gotten that backwards. We've gotten into a situation where the courts are now, or at least some courts, think that they are lawmaking bodies. And that's just not the way the system was designed. Judges need to stay in their lane, and you need to make sure that when you're voting on judges, you ask them what their judicial philosophy is, what their operating system is. Because if you've got a textualist or an originalist, chances are it's more of a common sense outcome or a common sense interpretation of the law. If you've got someone who is more living document minded, it could depend on what they ate for breakfast that morning and how that case is going to turn out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because as we can see, a lot of the thing, it seems to be more politically motivated now, where you see a lot of funding and donations going to more, I would say, liberal, judges of a different philosophy, I guess we could say. You really see them getting a lot of donations, outside money, just a lot of money they're pumping into the Supreme Court, at least for North Carolina, I've seen, or at least for certain judges. I know I'm not going to say names, but I've seen some where they raise an obscene amount of money. And, I just think that there's a point to that. They like having that option of, if we can't get it through the legislature, well, now we're going to get it through the Supreme Court. And ultimately, you see a lot of these things where they know that they can't get it passed through the legislative branch. They can't get it passed, through the House and things like that. They're going to go through the Supreme Court. And, I just think that it's sad, because that's not what it was meant for. As you say, it was more of you see what is in the language of the law, what the intent was behind it. Is there ambiguity or not? And it's not, okay, well, we're going to kind of stretch this as far as we can to where we're going to get it changed or get it implemented. And that's just not what the judges, in my opinion, were designed for. So.
Right. Well, just think about from history, that do we want a government of the people, by the people, or for the people, right? Or are we moving to a situation where it's a government of the judges, by the judges, and for the judges? If that's the way this country is moving, if that's the way the state is moving, then your voice in our government dwindles and it is not as effective as it is currently.
Yeah. So with that being said, what would you say? I mean, you kind of went on a little bit, or is there anything you want to add, or what would be your judicial philosophy for yourself? Like how do you interpret? I know a lot of people on here, believe in the Constitution, or very pro, their rights and things as they should be. But what is your philosophy on that, or how would you interpret it, or just in a roundabout way, how would you explain that to people?
Yeah. So really, if you are, well, I'm a textualist and originalist, right? So the best way I think to explain that would be, so it depends on who you're talking to, right? So I've got a great example that I use. Think about Christmas songs.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a song. It's an older one. There's no place like home for the holidays. Right. And there's a line in that song where it says, "Oh, the traffic is terrific." Right. So if you look at what terrific means by today's standards, right? Terrific means great. I'm motoring down the highway. Right. But if you look at what terrific meant when the song was written, the root word of terrific is terror, right? The traffic was awful. So that's kind of a silly example to illustrate a very serious point. If you are using modern interpretation of a statute or the Constitution, chances are you're going to get it wrong, right? But if you look to what's the original meaning, what does the text actually say, originalism, textualism, then you're going to come closer to what the authors of that legislation, the authors of the Constitution, intended for our government, intended for our people. And to the extent the courts or the judges look at the word terrific in that song and they go, oh, well, today's meaning, this is great, right? They have substituted their will for that of the legislature that passed the law. So they have not stayed in their separation of powers lane by not being faithful to the language of the statute or the language of the Constitution.
Awesome, thank you. So I know this has been a big concern, and I know it's a hot topic, and I know a lot of people don't realize. I know judges are very kind of limited on what you can say. And that's not just, it's not you being a politician, it's actually the rules of the law. Like for judges, you are held to a different standard, because you're licensed by the North Carolina bar, things like that you have to kind of politic a little different. So, some people may not understand, I just want to throw that out there before I ask you some questions, because I don't want you to feel like, I want to put you in jeopardy or anything like that. So, because it's really, people just have to understand that you are under a different set of rules than I am. I can pretty much say or do a lot of things compared to a judge. So bless you for taking on that role. But so with the hot topic of the police accountability, or you have the protests, you have defunding police, things like that. What is your opinion on, let's say like defunding the police or something like that? What would be your opinion on that?
Yeah. So, David, you're right. There are certain things I can comment on and certain things I can't. And it's not just the politician side. There are rules that govern judges' conduct, but on the defunding police, there's an aspect of it that a lot of people don't either think about or they don't get, right? And that's the administration of justice side of what happens if you do defund the police. Now, the primary role of any government is the protection of the people and their property, and to fulfill that basic mission, right? The government at all levels have to decide what's the appropriate level of funding for the police in order to effectively protect people and property. And that is purely a legislative question, right? What's the proper amount to fund the police or the sheriff's department or the highway patrol? Purely legislative matters. I'm sorry. But we've got to have a fully functioning judicial system, and effective enforcement of the law is critical to a fully functioning judicial system. And the failure of government to function at a basic level is detrimental to that judicial system. It's detrimental to justice. And the current debate over defunding law enforcement, as I said, totally legislative. But those decisions that will be made on the city council, county commission, legislature, they're going to impact the administration of justice. And adequately funding law enforcement is a conditioned precedent to a fully functioning judicial system that protects innocent people, punishes the guilty, and maintains respect and confidence of the public. So one of the things that has to happen is you've got to have recruitment and retention and training of well-qualified police officers, law enforcement officers. And we've got to have quality men and women who will serve in those roles. And if we have an exodus of qualified police officers, experienced officers, whether they're taking early retirement or they just say, to heck with this now and turn in their keys. If we've got an exodus of those well-qualified, highly trained, more knowledgeable police officers, then you're going to have less trained and less knowledgeable officers trying to solve crime, right? Going out to crime scenes, interviewing witnesses. And that could lead, those fewer resources, right? If we defund the police, if they have fewer resources, that could lead to innocent citizens being arrested. It could lead to criminals not being held accountable for their actions. And it could be that victims of crime are left without justice. So while it's a hot button political issue with people on both sides who care deeply, there's a secondary issue with defunding the police, and it will meet or likely meet individuals in their communities. Because think about it, and you know this, law enforcement officers make more constitutional decisions every day than any judge ever will, right? Because they are face-to-face with the Fourth Amendment at every stop. They're face-to-face with the Fifth Amendment at every interview. And those issues, you've got to have good training for that.
You just brought up a very good point that a lot of people don't understand, is that how much of the Constitution is in play, like the Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, search and seizure. You're arresting some people. You are getting, whether you get consent or whether they are being held while questioning or interrogated or in custody rather. Those are very, very great, very different areas that you can be in, and that you can make one split-second decision in the wrong and you violated somebody's constitutional rights. And a lot of people don't realize how important it is to make sure you follow those things, follow those guidelines every time, because if you do one slight detour, or if you're going to try and step outside of that, you're going to be in a world of trouble. You're going to get sued, or you're going to get, the charges definitely thrown out, things like that, or you'll be mentioned in case law, especially. So nobody wants that, so it's people don't realize, especially too, I think it's important for people to know their rights as well. I think if a lot of people knew what their rights were, you'd have a lot less issues on traffic stops or with certain searches and things like that. I think if people actually knew what they need to do during these situations, it would be less likely that you would have a negative outcome. And I think it's just, it's sad that a lot of people don't know their rights, but I think it's just getting out there and educating people and things like that.
Right. Well, to effectively exercise your rights, whether it's under the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, or to protect your rights under the Fourth or Fifth, you've got to have some basic understanding of civics, and unfortunately, that's an area that needs a lot of improvement in our society today.
Absolutely, and you bringing up the First Amendment, that goes into another thing of, I know, we have obtained our Juris Doctor. We know the law pretty well, more than most, I would say. But when it goes to the First Amendment and freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, things like that, with these protests going on, as a law enforcement officer, you're kind of you're in a tough spot, because at one point you have to allow people the right to assemble and express themselves. But at some point, they become violent or they start to riot, things like that. However, just for me being a, constitutionalist myself, I see it as you kind of got to have that balance. There is, you allow them to express themselves, but as soon as it starts to turn, you lay down the law with a heavy hand and stop it and end it right there. You can't allow these riots and this lawlessness to continue, in my opinion. Now, I know some people just don't think that they should be allowed to protest at all, or, just because that they had rioted in the past. Would you be able to speak to what you think, like, would that be constitutional to just flat out any group associated with a certain group that has been prone to potentially their protests turn into a riot? Would it be appropriate for law enforcement or for the government to not allow them to protest or assemble in the future from that?
Yeah, and David, that's something I can't speak to under the canon of the Code of Judicial Conduct, because there could be a case on that issue that comes before me. And
no, that's I didn't even think about, especially this being recent. So yeah, it's probably something we don't need to. So yeah, bless you for being a judge, like you said, because you're very limited on what you can say. So how about this? How important do you think is the right to assemble? I don't know if you can answer it that way, or how important do you think it is to allow people to be heard, or, especially like, that some people believe the Second Amendment is right below the first, because, when the first fails, you have the second, so it's, what is your opinion on that?
Well, so what I can say is, the Bill of Rights were passed for a specific purpose. And one of those purposes was to guarantee certain individual rights. Especially if you know your history from North Carolina, right? We were somewhat reluctant to sign the Constitution and insisted that some individual rights be protected. And the Bill of Rights is a product of North Carolina being an ardent supporter of individual rights. And so I can't speak directly to your question, but certainly anyone who understands the history and how the First and Second, Fourth Amendment, Third Amendment, we don't have courting of soldiers yet, but or sense, but there's a specific purpose for those amendments being in the Constitution, and people really should understand the history surrounding them.
Absolutely, because a lot what we're seeing today, and this is me speaking. I don't want to put this on you, but you see a lot of the people trying to erase history, but you got to look back to. Because if you look at case law, you look at the way the laws change, things like that, it typically goes back to the Constitution. What is someone, inalienable rights? If you look at through history, how it's changed and how it's basically referring always back to the Constitution. What is right? What is ethical? And it always goes back to that. And I think it's just really important to make sure that we have judges in place that at least believe the same way, is that the Constitution is very important, and that they will do everything they can to uphold that and make rulings appropriately. And I just, that's why I felt I needed to have you on, is because, I think we're at a very pivotal point now. And I just feel, being outnumbered, especially North Carolina, but also in the upper United States Supreme Court, thankfully we've been able to get several conservative judges in there. And I just feel that, we have at a point in this election because we have Ginsburg and potentially another one that's going to probably retire soon, a potential to have in there 4 justices in the Supreme Court selected by one president potentially. And I just want people to understand how important it is when you have a majority on the Supreme Court that will be deciding these cases that have far more impact over our laws and how we live and operate as society, how important that is. And I don't know if you can speak to this or not, but having that majority in a Supreme Court, what impact that would have as far as with how they, their philosophy on how they determine cases or things like that, or how they rule on things like that.
Well, I think certainly judicial philosophy matters. It matters to the process of reviewing cases. It matters to how you analyze cases. And ultimately, those two are reflected in the outcome of the case. So, it's very important, in my opinion, to have originalists or textualists on courts at all levels. And certainly, one of the things people don't talk about with the Supreme Court, didn't get it. It's not really as in the forefront as perhaps Ginsburg and Thomas, but Justice Alito has also sort of indicated that he may retire. So the ability for the appointment of another conservative justice to the Supreme Court, I think would be a win for those who want to return to judicial restraint, a return to a more originalist interpretation of the Constitution. And that's what we have here in North Carolina. We've got a situation now where our Supreme Court is not balanced. With Justice Newby being the only conservative of the 7 justices, we need balance on our courts. When you have a situation where one side doesn't have to listen to the other at all, I'm not saying they don't, but they don't have to, right? Then maybe you're not fully considering all the arguments. You're not fully considering all the positions, and not fully considering all the outcomes. I think if you've got balance, then some of those other ideas get vetted, and you produce a better product. And ultimately, that's what we should be doing is looking at the product we're producing for the state of North Carolina, the people of North Carolina. And I just, my personal belief and my experience has been people who are faithful to the law, faithful to the language that's been adopted by the legislature, tend to be better judges and tend to produce better outcomes.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of like group think. If like it's trying to get it down on the basic, common denominator. When you have everybody that, and when you look at even in politics today, where it's so polarized, if you surround yourself with everybody that thinks the same, you could be completely wrong, but you're all going to agree and move forward. And it's like, whoever has, and this is me speaking, okay, so don't, but, you're going to have everybody, agreeing, and you're not going to have that feedback, as opposed to even if it was like at this point, like 60-40 or 70-30, you would at least, like you said, have that opposing side to say, well, you know what, let's think about it, or even if it was, let's say 50-50, you have to negotiate. You have to come together and at least kind of discuss things, or else it won't work. So I think it's great, like you said, to have that diversity, because you ultimately may see something that somebody else missed, or, right. I think that's very important.
Yeah. Remember in the legislative context, what we heard a few years ago, it was supermajorities are bad. And why was it that one side complained about supermajorities? Because they didn't have a voice, right? So it's the same thing with what we have on the Supreme Court now. There's a supermajority, and there's one individual who, while he can dissent, essentially, there's a philosophical, a judicial philosophy that's not being heard. And so hopefully we can bring balance to the Supreme Court.
I agree. And, and if anybody listening, you definitely just Google Justice Newby and look at some of his dissents and being involved in the law like I do, I read that stuff for fun because I enjoy it. But, I know it's kind of, if you're not used to reading it, you're going to it'll probably be your first and only time. But if you do have the stomach for it, I strongly encourage you to read it. It has some good stuff in there, some good stuff. I really, appreciate his opinion on things. And I know we've kind of spoken a little bit. I mean, not about, just kind of obviously like we're talking now as far as, just my opinion. I know you can't really express yours so much, but, I kind of feel like, you have more of a, conservative way of how you interpret things. I mean, I know you can't really say everything, but, from what I interpret, you as your philosophy is more conservative, which I believe in. I agree with. I know a lot of people probably do, and they feel like, unfortunately, because I know the money situation, they give so much money to these Democratic justices, and it's just hard for as conservatives for us to compete. And I just strongly encourage people to review that and donate to you, because I know with judges, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you really can solicit money or things like that under the rules. I could be wrong, but I know it's more difficult for you guys to do that in some regards. And, I just think it's important that a lot of people don't do that or look to that,
Right. Well, so we are permitted to raise money, very similar to legislative and executive branch candidates. There are some restrictions, but for the most part, a lot of the restrictions that were in place have been taken away because there was a recognition. Look, essentially, judges have to run for a political office, so you need to sort of take the reins off. What we've seen, though, and you alluded to this earlier, is there's a lot of money, special interest money, that's coming into this state to influence our judicial elections. And I would encourage people to look at where that money's coming from, look at who it's going to, and think about maybe how that plays into partisanship and judicial philosophy as well. If you're a living document type, then that certainly might be appealing to some candidates and some donors.
Well, I encourage everybody, to help you out, or everybody running. But I think you do excellent work. So obviously, I'm partial, but I strongly encourage people to definitely check you out online. Your website. You're on Facebook, Phil Berger Jr. And I believe you're on Twitter as well. I haven't been using Twitter as much with all their limiting speech and whatnot, but I still use it. But I strongly encourage anybody to look you up. Go on your webpage. Definitely do that, because we gotta push to get. I don't want people to forget about judges. Not with this election cycle, because I'm just over it. And I think a lot of other people are as well, because, and I know you can't speak to this, but and I'll just tell you from the feedback I receive, and I know, I don't think I've told you about it, or I might have, from, just trying to talk with you, but people feel kind of like their voice isn't being heard, because if you look back, voter ID, overwhelming, support was voted into law. They took it to the through the judicial side, and it was deemed unconstitutional. Then you see with like the whole, you see with the lockdowns, things like that. Well, that I don't believe that went to the Supreme Court. However, they still use judicial means to keep it in place, things like that. When a lot of people feel, even though in some regards, yes, it is constitutional, but a lot of people feel that they're being oppressed or being held down over something that is highly unconstitutional, or that they, in their opinion, should the governor have that much power? And, I just think that a lot of people need to do their research on these judges, even at the district level. And, the Superior Court, appeals all the way up Supreme Court, because people don't realize how much authority they have whenever there's this type of issue in the law, or we're trying to get something done. And we have the majority somewhat in North Carolina as far as Republican, but they're going to use the judicial branch to almost circumvent that. So, I just feel it's very important. I know you can't speak on that, but.
Right, but you brought up a good point though about, district court, superior court, into the appellate courts. Another sort of aspect of judges that people don't consider a lot is every decision made by a judge in this state, really across the country, but every decision made by a judge in a courtroom in this state has an economic impact, whether it's on an individual, a family, a business, or a community. So we need judges who understand that some basic economic principles, right? And the where we are now as a state and nation, the one decision by a court that's hostile to business can have grave economic consequences, not only for that business that's a party to the lawsuit, but for the body of law that affects how you run your business, how you make a profit, how you provide for your family, how many employees you can have. So we need to make sure that we have judges that have common sense interpretation, not only for the law, but for regulations. And, so whether it's a permitting decision for your business, interpretation of contracts, protection of property rights, those are things that I hope the public looks at when they're considering who to vote for. And on that point of voting, somebody had a great slogan for what to do about voting for judges. And we're on the back side of the ballot at the bottom. You have to really look for us. And they said, if you want to turn this country around, you've got to turn your ballot over. And I thought, oh man, that's brilliant.
I can't agree more, because a lot of people, they'll vote for president, Senate. All right, I'm done. We turn it in. and you see, that's why a lot of, I'll just put it as the other side. They put, they target certain races, like for the sheriff's race here in Wake County. I've never seen the ACLU or any of these other people do buy ads or get involved. And, it's a lot of outside, like you said, special interest. And, they target certain races where they feel in certain areas that they can win. So they can kind of, and that's what a lot of people I think are being frustrated with, is that the local sheriffs now that aren't complying with ICE, things like that, it's like they're using them now, the sheriffs now, to circumvent the law. They're using the sheriffs to get their way now, as opposed to judges. They're kind of using these, little chess pieces, as you were, to move forward an agenda. And, I know that kind of may sound extreme to some, but, I kind of see things for what they are. And that is just my opinion. I know, but I don't know if you're able to comment to something around that realm at all or anything, but.
Yeah, no, I can't comment on that.
Yeah, I figured. But, I got to try, because and forgive me, I haven't looked up. I just know that you have restrictions. I haven't delved into them, or because I'm not a judge or haven't looked at becoming a judge. So,
no. Yeah, it's a common thing. I was on the radio with Governor McCrory a few weeks ago, and Governor McCrory wanted to ask some particular question. They're like, Governor, I can't answer that. So it's tough running for judge because people want answers. They want to know what you think. And when you tell them, look, I'm bound by certain rules that don't apply to Senate, House, all these other candidates, and they look at you like, you're just a politician. You're telling me you can't answer something. No, we really can't. So it's tough, but it's about fairness. think about it. If I were to be on some stage and I made some pronouncement that I personally believe X, right, and a case came before me concerning X, you think, knowing what my personal opinion is as a litigant, you may think, man, I'm going to have a really good hearing, or I'm not going to get a fair hearing. And so it's about maintaining impartiality and making sure that everybody believes they've been treated fairly.
Absolutely. And, I'm trying to draw that. I wanted at least people to understand, because a lot of people don't. And, to draw that comparison, because here I could say whatever, pretty much anything. But, but of course, I would treat people impartial, as well, because as sheriff, you got to serve all people. Same thing as with a judge. You're for the people. You are serving the law, or you are, dispensing the law, I guess, or however you want to put it. But you are making judgment on things that based on the Constitution. It's not like you're, it's not like you're going to be impartial to somebody of different religious faiths or different nationalities or sex, things like that. Same thing as me. It's not like if somebody calls me or calls the sheriff's office at 1 a.m. and is like, somebody has a gun, help. I'm not going to say, well, hold on a second. What's your political party? Because, we need to straighten that out first. No, it's you go answer the call, you go help those that you swore to protect. And, similar to judges, you are bound by the law. You have to be impartial. You believe in the Constitution as myself, and you got to put that first. And I think and I'm glad you were able to show that and at least explain that to people, because it gets lost in the mix. And, a lot of people just think, yeah, you're just being a politician. No, you're just being a good judge is what you're doing. So I just wanted people to know that.
Yeah, well, and another thing, so for your viewers who have been jurors, one of the things in the standard jury instruction is, can you apply the law as I instruct you, even if you personally disagree with it, right? So that's a question we ask of jurors, and when they say, well, yeah, I can be fair, I can be impartial, then we allow them to serve as jurors, even if they disagree with the law. But judges are a little bit different, and even that statement that despite my personal opinion that I've expressed, which I haven't expressed any personal opinion, but if I were, we can't just say, but I can be fair.
Yeah. Well, you hit it right there. I mean, and I think, and two, just getting on 8. I know you're a busy man. I'm not going to hold you up. I'm just very thankful you came out and were able to speak, and because I just, it's just great. I like this stuff. I'm more of a nerd to where I enjoy this, as you know. So, it's great to me. I'm like, it's like me going on a vacation. I'm able to discuss the law with a justice. So this is good to me, but, I just want to spread that to other people that would potentially vote for you, because this is very important. But is there anything you would want to tell people, kind of do your little stump speech, or anything important you would like to tell people, as far as this election, anything like that?
Well, David, again, thank you for having me. If I could leave your viewers and the people who are watching with just one thought, it would be this. I am currently the only former elected DA on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. If I'm elected, I will be the only former elected DA on the North Carolina Supreme Court. And I think we need to bring law and order to the Supreme Court. And I think I'm the candidate to help do that and bring balance. So I thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight, and certainly thank you for all of your help and support.
Absolutely. Anything you need, let me know. And I hope everybody follows suit and at least checks you out. I'll put your links in the comments and things like that in case if people want to check you out, and I encourage everybody to do so. So,
Thank you, David.
You have a good night. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.